Hello everyone! Today I am going to be reviewing an album that I've been wanting to talk about on this channel for quite some time. This is the 5th studio album by Canadian pop artist Nelly Furtado titled The Spirit Indestructible. This album was released on September 14th, 2012. I've reviewed her albums Loose and her recent album The Ride, which came out 2 years ago on this channel, so I highly recommend you check those out, any Nelly Furtado fans. And I had lots of great things to say about those records, but honestly, the album that comes to mind, well, Loose is an iconic record, and we all can admit that, but the album that I was the most excited to see come out, because I was a huge fan of her at that time, was this album called The Spirit Indestructible, which was her first English language album in 6 years. In between Loose and The Spirit Indestructible, she released a Spanish album in 2009 called Mi Plan. I've actually only heard like the singles off of that record, I must confess, so that's still on the list of like things I need to go back to and like catch up on, and yeah, I'm gonna get to it at some point. I don't know if I'll ever film a review for it, but I haven't heard every single Nelly Furtado song, believe it or not. I still need to go back and like go into her first 2 albums more. Like, I've gone through most of it, but like there's only things I've heard in snippets in some of those records. So like, trust me, the story is never, you know, it's just there's so much music to catch up on, you know, from the past. And I really wish when I was younger, although I was pretty young when her first album came out, I was only like 7 years old. But I really wish I'd been following a lot of these artists' careers like from the very beginning. But like, I didn't really understand. I just didn't follow like pop music until I was like 14 years old. So I'm a little late to the game in a lot of things. So The Spirit Indestructible, or TSI for short. As I said, this album came out 6 years after, you know, she had been dominating mainstream pop music in 2006 and 2007. She was working with Timbaland, she was working with Justin Timberlake, all of these big names in production in the pop scene. She was like this very sort of a glamorous, kind of like Shakira meets Fergie meets, you know, Madonna type artist. And she was very sexual on her Loose album. It was her, you know, big mainstream record. It was interesting because for me, you know, that was the album that introduced me to Nelly Furtado, and I thought, oh, okay, she's just, you know, I only heard like the singles. I didn't go deep into that album, Loose, which actually isn't all extroverted. There's some like really nice introverted cuts on that record. But when you think of Loose, you just think of it as like a party record. It's like a Miami night kind of record. And she describes it as that. But, you know, it's interesting to go back to her first 2 albums and be like, oh my God, this is like alternative folk, like a little bit rock. It's like so different, and it's so not mainstream in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm Like a Bird, we've all heard. That was like her big breakout single. So like that was definitely a moment for her. But otherwise, between I'm Like a Bird and Promiscuous, you know, everything else that Nelly Furtado has basically done has been very criminally slept on by the mainstream. It's really sad, you know? I mean, she did the Spanish language album. She actually has Portuguese ancestry, but she speaks Spanish. Kind of confusing. I think she might actually be able to speak Portuguese as well. Because I think she has a Portuguese parent. I can't remember. She's got interesting ancestry. So yeah, so it's kind of interesting where she's from. It's like, okay, she's Canadian. Yeah. Anyway, we had the most recent record, The Ride. Like I said, she goes back to that sort of very much experimental alternative route. And very, very, very different from what she was doing in 2007. So, okay, The Spirit Indestructible is an interesting record because it's an album that really is a conglomeration of all of the things she had done up until that point. There are elements of folklore. There are elements of Mi Plan. There are elements of Loose. There are elements of Whoa Nelly, all mixed together to form a cornucopia of sound that is still very much pop, that is quite urban in parts, but is so diverse in its contexts and in its layering and sounds and instruments that are used, and styles of music that she employs. And it was an album I got really, really excited by, even from just hearing the first lead single, which was released way months before, called Big Hoops, Bigger the Better. Now I'm going to go through the track list and talk about each song, so I'm just giving some background here. And the sad thing about this record is that it was when, you know, it's an Interscope was her record label. It was like this huge moment that she was working with, again, some of these big producers. You know, it was meant to be like an album that was going to, like, you know, The Ride was like very much like a passion project for her, where she realized it was like, okay, we're not trying to chart it all here. We're not, you know, making music to, you know, win any awards. Like, we're just making music for fun, for the fans, to just, because I love music and because I want to experiment and grow and change. And with the Spirit Indestructible, I mean, Nelly was definitely doing that as well. But I could tell, you know, there was an element of like trying to replicate the success that she had with Loose. In my opinion, Loose, the Spirit Indestructible, like, which one's better? I mean, I can't, it depends what mood I'm in. Like, both records are really strong, but at the end of the day, if you look at the you know, chart positionings, and if you look at even the album, the critical acclaim, like, people just really slept on the Spirit Indestructible. The album received almost no promotion whatsoever. I think one of the only times I saw any sort of major promotion for it was when she actually was like a guest on a TV show called 90210. It was like the reboot one that was, you know, remember that used to be on like 10 years ago? And I watched that show at that time, and I was like, yes, they're having like they're promoting Nelly Furtado. Like, someone's doing it, because she is not being promoted at all. Like, it was like, I don't know. It's really sad to me. I think her record label, I mean, it had been too long, maybe, and they just didn't put the money behind her. But at the same time, you know, I mean, she had a very sort of international, and she's always had a huge sort of international fan base. I mean, she's not even American, you know? So, like, this album was really pushed in Europe, and I think it, like, still didn't do that well worldwide, but, like, she realized she wasn't just focusing on the US charts, whereas I think with Loose, that was, like, very much more the focus. So, you know, it just, at the end of the day, I think it's an interesting record, and, like, as I go through this track list, I'll talk about which songs I think stand out. Like, it's been, you know, it's been, like, almost 7 years since this album came out now. Gosh, it's crazy 2012 was that long ago. Like, part of me feels like it was just yesterday. Where is this decade gone? Like, holy crap. But yeah, some of the songs are really timeless. And then, you know, there are others where, you know, maybe it does sound like she was chasing a specific style. Let's get right into this record, though, because I do want to just talk about, like, the general theme, which ties into the first title track, which is The Spirit Indestructible. This was actually a single that was for Europe, but not for the US. It was the second single, though, if you consider it, you know. Had a music video. And this is a song that ties in the cohesive theme of the element of freedom and spiritual expression, tied into the idea that the human spirit perseveres through everything. Through thick and thin, you will rise up on top if you are true to yourself, true to nature. And there's a real celebration about this song, that it's yet very simple, but like extremely energetic and rhythmic. Just with that simple keyboard that sort of enters us in with Nelly, with her, you know, slightly nasal tone. It's very distinctly her sound. From my 1 square foot window, I see outside. I've got chains on my feet, but not in my mind. I'll be dancing all day, see the sun outside. Don't know how long it will be, can't stop me. In the chorus, I have a spirit indestructible, a heart that loving was made for, a body that's a miracle. I have a spirit indestructible, a heart that was made pure, unbreakable, and that's for sure, unshakable, so give me more. As she says in the description, this is a tribute to humanity. And it's that uplifting song that is always going to speak volumes to you whenever you're listening to it and you need to pick me up. It's an interesting, great way to open up this record. You know, it's bringing in like slightly more world-sounding instrumentation in there. The beat is just so infectious. You really do feel like, kind of like in the music video, it shows dancers pounding their chests by a fire, like out in the wilderness. It definitely brings that, at the same time, like very primal but also esoteric energy. She ad-libs as she fades out the song by saying what sounds to be the vowel sounds, A, E, I, O, U. And I think that's kind of interesting, and I've heard some people theorize that, like, that has something to do with, like, you know, the primal vowel sounds in language. this weird sort of way of expressing like something that's more deep than just like the English language, for example. And I definitely think that's an interesting way to sort of outro. But it definitely I don't know, it's not my favorite part of the song, I will say that, because it just is so left field. And the song is like kind of asking for like just these big powerful chords and these big powerful notes. And for that part, she's sort of just riffing a little bit. I don't know how else to describe it, but overall, it's a great song that kicks off the album beautifully. I mentioned the first lead single, which is track 2, Big Hoops, Bigger the Better. This is like an old school hip hop song that definitely is throwing it back to like the 90s sound. You know, it definitely feels like the kind of salt and pepper hip girl group hip hop music that Nelly was very much influenced by as a teenager growing up in Canada. She talks about how, you know, she references that she would wear these big hoop earrings as a teenager and go to the mall, and like she found confidence through these hoop earrings. Like it was like the bigger the better, you know, like and it's a representation, a metaphor of like fashion and expression. It's also a bit of a celebration of Latina culture because, you know, big hoop earrings are somewhat considered a very Latina staple. And, you know, I can imagine, you know, she's in a predominantly white area in Ontario and she's not necessarily finding a lot of Latin culture to resonate with. So like expressing her Latin roots through her earrings is like actually pretty liberating for her, I can imagine. Though there's something so powerful and again, almost spiritual about this song, even though lyrics kind of take you all over the place. I don't want to talk about sex, want to express myself tonight. She sings in almost a robotic way as she's really on the beat here. And this is a song where, like I said, she's really like flowing well with her lyricism. And again, it's not everyone's cup of tea, her voice, which is a very kind of distinctly nasal sound, which I do think she leans into in the processed area a lot on this record, and on others, not so much. So that's where it might, if people don't really appreciate that element of her voice, it might be a little grating for them. But I mean, I highly recommend you check out this music video. It's got some really interesting First Nation dancing with like hoops. So she takes the concept of hoops and she uses Native American hoop dancers as another expression of kind of a cultural symbolism of freedom, of liberation, to tie into her, you know, personal interpretation of the lyrics that she's singing. It's got an electronic edge. I mean, it's got really avant-garde production. It's sassy. It's funky. I love how, you know, they sing, "Oh, you thought the song was over? Bring the beat back. We're not done yet." It just devolves into this sort of like murkier electronic song. So it's punky, it's edgier than like stuff she was doing on Loose. And I really appreciate that. And she kind of grows to larger than life in the music video to show how she's been, you know, built up by all of these, you know, all of these things that make her feel strong. And she can take on the world and take on the city with newfound confidence. Brilliant song, brilliant song. There are people who trash on this kind of stuff, this song. Like, they're just like, oh, this was like really kind of silly and like, I don't know. It's not, to each his own, but it's a highlight for sure. Track number 3, High Life, featuring the rapper Ace Primo. This is a song where, you know, is it that memorable to me? I don't know. It's a song where she's referencing, you know, how she's looking back at, you know, her trajectory. I never looked back once I left my hometown. I had to find that high life, say goodbye to everybody I know. Everybody's dreaming of the high life. It may look good from the outside, but all I really wanted was a good life with a memory reel of all the highlights. So, you know, a throwback sounding song. Sonically, not quite as strong for me. I do think that, like, this is one of the songs where, like, if she's leaning very high into those processed kind of high-pitched vocals, it does get a little grating. The rap feature, it definitely feels like it belongs, and it's kind of a nice respite. This is the one song where her vocals aren't so strong for me. So I actually don't mind the rap feature because it helps kind of talk about that struggle, you know, that struggle that she, you know, and him, the rapper Ace Primo, are kind of bonding over. And what really is the high life? You know, what is the American dream? You know, Parking Lot. So this was the third single or the second American single. Now I will say this song is anthemic, but the version that we get on the album itself is a slightly watered down version to what was a live version that I had seen in a some sort of AOL sessions. Remember there used to be AOL sessions? Remember AOL.com? Remember AOL Music? That's how I got into pop music, was through AOL Music. But she did a performance of Parking Lot long before the album came out. And I had gotten so addicted to that version, that sort of live, but what felt also sort of like a playback version of that song. So that when we finally got the studio version, I felt like her vocals were dialed back. And there's something in the mixing. Her vocals don't stand out quite as strong. The song feels a little tired in parts, and the production a little heavy-handed. It has, again, a very cool sort of urban-themed music video where she's dancing in a parking lot. Some very strong consonant enunciations. Meet you in the parking lot. We'll wait around to get a spot. You know, she's on those consonants with the beat here. Again, not everyone's cup of tea. It's got a very kind of schoolyard marching band sound, and it's got this cool funky dance move. It's been considered, you know, again, a loose era sounding song, and the music video is definitely playing off of like some of the man-eater promiscuous kind of music video vibes. We ain't doing nothing. No, we ain't doing nothing. I'm telling all my friends that it's pretty casual. I think there's some interesting approaches to the lyrics where she is singing but also rapping at the same time. And yeah, I don't know. It's a little Gwen Stefani. It's a little Valley Girl in parts. And it's in character for Nelly. I think that, you know, it's again, for her, it's like talking about when she was young and in high school and just like finding that energy with her friends and like with her boyfriend and sort of those clandestine meetings in the parking lot, you know, where like romping around in a barn in the hay, she sings in the bridge. And there is this sort of like sarcasm and wit to like her lyrics and her delivery that you can hear through the way she delivers them. She actually talks about it as her own take on Summer of '69, the iconic Bryan Adams song from the 80s. So yeah, it's for her, it's like a throwback moment probably to the 90s, like that sort of sound and that kind of lifestyle for her. Track number 5, Something, featuring the iconic rapper Nas. Something is a very sort of up-tempo, urban-sounding track. A really nice hook to it. Lyrics are kind of vague and kind of open, but I don't know. It's not a song that I look to for being like super lyrically rich. It's more for like the vibe. It's a darker song too. It's like, it's got that edge. And like I said, this is an album that feels like it's very urban, but then in parts it's like very open and like natural. So it's an interesting contrast. And like I said, it's a mix of things. I do think it's a song that could have been stripped right off of her 2006 album Loose. That's for sure. I know how to turn nothing into something. It's like, all right, girl. All right, do you. Bucket List. I love this song. It's definitely the song that reminds me the most of Whoa, Nelly. It's got the acoustic guitar. It's probably one of the like least produced songs on the record, and that's the most live sounding. And she's just singing about everything that she would want to do, you know, as, you know, a bucket list would entail. But she does sing about, at the bottom of that list, I had our first kiss, and tying that into like how badly I want that to happen. She references, you know, going to the North Pole, running a marathon, seeing Ground Zero, all of these important things, but like getting that first kiss is that like one moment that like it really would matter the most. And so again, it shimmers. This song is just like so airy and light, even though it's dealing with kind of like the heavy subject of like life and how we only have so much of it and we need to get things done that we want to do because you never know if tomorrow's going to come around. A highlight track for sure. The Most Beautiful Thing, track 7, featuring Sarah Tavares. Sarah's not actually a vocalist on this song. She is the narrator to a diary entry at the opener of this song. And when I first heard it, I was just like, I am so here for this ambiance. We get this very sweeping coastal, melancholic melody that really takes you to a summer night, you know, in some Latin country or maybe a European Mediterranean. I think she talks about how this was about when she was a kid, they would go to Portugal and like they would be on these like gorgeous like patios on the ocean. Like she would remember that as a child. So she's imbuing it with this sort of nostalgia that's so beautiful, and she's singing about the narrator Sarah is talking about, you know, tonight will be the night. I think I'm going to dance with him. I'm really nervous, but I'm so excited. It has that, you know, 15-year-old girl who's gone on like almost like it's very almost Disney Channel in how like teenage girly it is. But I love it because it's such a interjection of like realness to this record. She always has some really interesting interludes and outros to her albums, and this is no exception. And then she sings about, in a very sort of light and airy kind of soaring song, all I've known, all I've seen, you're the most beautiful thing. Everyone is looking for it, searching until they are hurting for it. Stop looking in the mirror, we've got just what we came with. So you're the one of my dreams. And also, we are all the ones of our dreams. This song could take it to an esoteric level, and that's how I interpret it in a lot of ways. Definitely an interesting track for sure. It leads us into, this song definitely is the intro to the next track. This was the fourth and final single from this record, Waiting for the Night. This is definitely one of the most up-tempo songs on the record, and one of my favorites. One of the songs that most leans into her Latin roots, you know, the aspect of like, you know, the salsa, the dancing, the you know, what sounds almost kind of Cuban to me. It sounds like a bit like a song you play in Havana. And again, it's inspired by this trip to São Miguel Island in Portugal that she wrote when she was 16. It's actually where her parents are from. I just realized that. Baby, I know you're outside, and here it's warm and dry. Got feelings that I've got to try expressing, like a language that I share with you. Let's talk in the special way we do. Don't want to be anywhere else here but with you. Feels so good. Day and night, you are blowing my mind. You blow my mind. And I can't help myself at all. I can't hold back. So I'm waiting for the night. Again, this anticipation of romance that you're going to experience for the first time, that's so fresh and so mesmerizing. And that's what this song is. I mean, this song is a whirlwind of color, of flavor, of romance, of whimsy. A highlight track for sure. Definitely one of my favorites. The next track, Miracles, opens up on a very distinctly Eastern and slightly Indian instrumental. It instantly intrigued the eardrums of me. She sings in a much more sort of lofty and esoteric manner on this track. Turn every tear on my face to gold. Make the skin on the back of my neck turn cold. Need to feel my bare feet on your road. I will never again walk alone. If you question my faith, I'd still believe. Put a knife in my heart, I wouldn't bleed. This is brand new air that I'm breathing. Show me all of your miracles. I'm totally inside your waterfall. Never felt something this real before. I believe in all of your miracles. I think it's pretty clear to say that this is a song about unabashed faith in a higher power. It doesn't necessarily have to be religious. It doesn't have to be Christian. I love how open it is to just understanding and expressing the sheer awe and wonderment of what reality and the world is for us. Bask in it. Let us sit under that waterfall and feel the miracles of all that is life. And so the unabashed positivity, the esoteric delivery with the instrumentals that are very distinctly Eastern, this is a song that stands out and probably is my favorite song on this record for sure. It has a really strong bridge, some interesting key changes, yet still a bit of an urban, you know, beat structure to it. So it's got that energy. The energy is one thing I'll say. The energy doesn't really slow down on this record. Like this is an album that keeps you moving, with maybe the most beautiful thing being kind of the one sort of moment where things like calm down for a second. Next track, Circles. I think this is probably the most folklore sounding song on this record. It's a lot more sort of synthetic in sound than a lot of the stuff she did on Folklore. But in terms of its sort of introspective, kind of close to your chest sonics and lyrics, I think that it reminds me of that album the most. It's a really unique song for her. It showcases her voice really beautifully. There's some interesting synths that sort of riff off of her voice. It's almost like she's trying to mimic her high-pitched nasal sound with some of the production. And the lyrics speak about, the frustration of a relationship that isn't actually going anywhere. We're just going in circles. The day is getting late. It's a lot to take looking at your face. It hides nothing. Emotions are recycled. I open the window. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling stifled. Then I just get a glimpse. I see where our love is. Please look into my eyes. Baby, you gotta try. And in the hook, she just sings, dial into me. In that high-pitched, endearing tone, dial into me, don't talk in circles. And just like that, the song refrains and we go right back to that early synth production. We start verse 2. I think it's brilliant how the dial into me is this drawn out sort of swelling, airier moment. And then she punctuates it just with like, don't talk in circles. Because that sort of reiterates how it's like, things aren't moving. Things aren't, going forward. We're just going to keep going back and be stuck. If you want to keep this going, the song will just keep repeating itself. I think that's a really clever way to sort of illustrate the theme through the actual composition. Track number 11, Enemy. Not as such a sonically memorable track for me. It's not a song I would seek out. It's only a song I listen to when I'm hearing the whole record. A song that, again, speaks more about insecurities. She sings it right at the beginning. It's pretty straightforward. I'm my own worst enemy. I'll be the end of me. I wanted to go to the distance. I met everything with resistance. I pulled the pin out on the grenade, burned down everything I had made. She talks about how she's a perfectionist, how, and as so often with perfectionists, we are our own worst enemies. We tear ourselves apart. She says, I put on my armor, strap on my boots, look around to see which weapons I'll choose. I'm going for medals, decoration. I'm pulling out from my lonely station. I think this song is definitely a precursor to where she sort of heads in her next record, The Ride, which will come, 5 years later. Because she's starting to deal with like this deep sort of personal baggage in a very sort of unique kind of experimental alternative way that is very not pop. And so I think that this is like a precursor in going that direction. But melodically, it doesn't stand out to me so much. The final track on the standard edition, though, Believers, and then in parentheses, Arab Spring, which I think is a really interesting title. This is a moment. This is a moment where she really opens up the sound to be a much more band. Like, it sounds like there's an actual band behind her. We've got the guitars, we've got this sort of pulsating rhythm, and it's a song I love to drive to. You're on the wrong side, looking at the right side. This is the last light at the end of the day. You're on a long flight, taking your last bite of the good life before it goes away. Those lyrics really hit home for me when I first heard them. She pleads, where'd you go? Oh, where'd you go, my friends? You said you would be there till the end. Knock you down, you get back up again. And when they run after you, you just run from them. Where are all the believers? Where are they when you need them? Where are all of the healers? Why'd they run away? I really do think the fact that, it has Arab Spring in the parentheses of this title, I really do think that this song was majorly inspired by what was going on in around 2011 and 2012 in Egypt and in Libya, considered the Arab Spring, where there were these uprisings against these authoritarian governments. And she takes that and she sort of runs with it and turns it into this broader, again, it's about humanity. It can at the same time be very personal, but it can also be about like, where are our leaders? Where are the healers? Are we going to be, actually outrunning the people who are chasing us? Are we really living the right life? Are we making the right decisions? It's a very open song, and I really do think she leaves it up to interpretation to just sort of end the standard edition on this note of like questioning the status quo, and giving us a taste of like what I think she's exploring even more so on her next record. And she ends by saying with the I statement, because at the beginning the rest is like very general, and it's like this is what people do, and then she says, I need somebody to save me now. And it's sort of the album kind of ends with this crashing guitar as she's singing that. Like, it's just like this this punk moment for a moment there. And that's why I say this album is a cornucopia of sound, because every song is like a different flavor of different styles and genres of music. And so I could see why some people are like, well, there's probably one song you like and then the rest you won't, because there's something there for everyone. But this is a highlight track for sure, another favorite, along with Miracles and Big Hoops. Now, there are a lot of bonus tracks. Now, I'm going to just talk about the US edition deluxe tracks really quickly. I don't want this review to be too long. There are a myriad different deluxe versions for this album that were released all over the world. You know, Japan had one, the UK had another, Germany had another one, Switzerland had their own. You know, I mean, Mexico. I mean, it was, you know, Canada. I'm going to just talk about the US bonus tracks for a minute. We get the very sort of loose throwback type R&B Latin track, which is Hold Up, which features some vocal breakdowns. Interesting song, very kind of, like I said, very sort of dialing in on that sort of sexy Miami sound that she was doing a lot with Timbaland. Again, like I said, it just is like a flavor of that. We have the very open and soaring ballad, The End of the World, which I must admit at first really hit me because it was just like, oh, this is a really endearing ballad, but maybe at the end of the day, over time, it just doesn't necessarily stand up so strongly. But it's still a moment where, you know, she is reflecting on something. If you go, I want to go with you. If you run, I want to run with you. If you cry, I want to cry with you. I'd do anything for love. I'd go anywhere. I'd be anywhere, go anywhere with you, even to the end of the world. Like, it's this unabashed love song, and it's kind of basic and simple and straightforward, but hey, we all have got to get that out of our chest, you know? Another interesting song is Don't Leave Me. So we get some island Caribbean reggae on this record, and this was one of the earlier songs that she made for this record, but like, it took a while for this record to be fully made. And she really leans into that, you know, distinct sound. And her voice is so well suited to reggae. I would love to see her. Like I said, I need to listen to Mi Plan more because I'm sure it has a lot more Latin sounds. I really appreciate, you know, her leaning into that style and genre. She carries it off beautifully. You know, singing about a woman who is just basically like going insane from, you know, this lover who's constantly, you know, playing her and like hot and cold. It definitely kind of feels like a song they would play at a telenovela because it has the feeling of like that Latin woman who's just been scorned by that guy she keeps coming back to and falling for because he's so gorgeous. You know, here I go again with my head in my hands when you say you'll call, but you don't. And then I'll pretend this is the last time. I'll take you back when you say you're sorry. This is a familiar trope. I think we fall for these players and, you know, we don't like stand up for ourselves. And so we plead, don't leave me. But there's this desperation in this song. You can tell this woman is just like completely going insane. And she harmonizes so beautifully with herself. There's some gorgeous layering on this track in the chorus. Okay, so then another interesting song, we have a country moment. Be Okay, featuring country artist Dylan Murray. I don't know anything about Dylan. All I know is that he's also on Interscope, and I think it was sort of a, oh, my manager just got in touch with your manager and they wanted us to collaborate sort of thing. I don't know if Nelly just was a fan of his and sought him out. But it's an interesting collaboration. It's a straightforward song about, you know, finding motivation and being that helping hand for someone who's obviously going through it. Are you going to be okay? I've been doing so much thinking about you. Fall asleep and I start dreaming about you. And again, if you want to consider like a throwback, Whoa Nelly comes to mind because this has like almost the I'm Like a Bird chorus as it sails with the guitar. And like Whoa Nelly had some country elements to it. So it's got that country folk sound, and her and Dylan Murray's vocals, they harmonize gorgeously together. So it's a really nice, beautiful, summery moment on this record. And it couldn't be more diverse and different from the track preceding it in terms of influence and style. But that's what I love about this record is, like I said, it's just all sorts of sounds from all over the world coming together. The final track on this version of the album, there are more, but like I said, I've only really listened to these versions, Thoughts, featuring the Kenyan Boys Choir. So this is a moment where we get African music coming in, and I think it's so, children's choir. I think it's such a gorgeous way to close out the album. It's just a simple guitar, and this children's choir, and she sings, "Meet me in a dream, meet me in a song, or in a melody that lasts too long, but stop invading my thoughts." And so we have some vocalizations by some male singers in an African language, probably a Kenyan language. And she kind of steps aside and lets them sort of harmonize with her, but also have their own moments. And it's this really sort of a heartfelt moment on this record. There's actually a remix with Tiesto, who's a house producer, that also features. You'd think Tiesto is like, how is this going to turn into a dance song? But it's just a different sort of a mix of the song with her voice and the Kenyan with the boys' choir, and it actually features a bit more of them vocalizing. But overall, I mean, both versions are so gorgeous together. It's a shorter song. It's like I said, it feels a bit like an outro, but it closes the album gorgeously. She had actually been visiting Kenya quite a bit for a charity foundation that she had been a part of, which she had been working on a group called Free the Children Foundation, a group that's been working on building schools in a specific region of Kenya. So she's been there a lot even since this album has come out. She's been doing a lot of charity work in Kenya. That's sort of an area that she loves to visit and help out. And, I love seeing artists create these kind of cool collaborations with different artists and singers that you wouldn't normally hear in the Western world. All in all, the Spirit Indestructible, I think what makes it live up to its title is because it is about humanity. And in doing that, she's tying in, like I said, Kenyan school choirs, Latin reggae, folk, electronic, country, dance, EDM, like Latin salsa and samba. Like she's tying in like the tango. She's tying in all of these different flavors of cultural music to form a product that is unabashedly about love, about heartbreak, about humanity, about tribulations and trials. It's a record that I think she really just needed to make for herself, to get all of these like big ideas to paper in this very sort of artistic, uniquely produced, interesting way. There were a lot of producers on this record. Rodney Jenkins being one of the, Dark Child. He was one of the prominent ones. I love his unique productions, like edgy. Ultimately, I mean, I knew I had to take the time to talk about this record. Oh, the image of her on the album cover describes it perfectly. It's like that woman who's like metropolitan, wrapped around with these colorful kind of cultural scarves and clothing with the big hoop earrings, who's not forgetting their roots, who's about to celebrate just a lot of unique cultures and explore her sort of colorful personality and have those introverted but also those extroverted moments. It's a really interesting record and one that will forever be criminally slept on by the mainstream. There are certain songs like Big Hoops that I think should have been the song of 2012. Like Big Hoops and Promiscuous are both amazing songs, but one was like super everywhere and the other, it's just like, we don't want to talk about it. Whatever. Mainstream sleeps on good things all the time. It's, it is what it is. Nelly is obviously not wanting so much to be catered to be like the specific manufactured image that I think her label was very much doing at that time for her. Not that she regrets it, but it's just that was her at the time, and that's not her now. So she's on more herself, I think. And she's quirky and fun and free-spirited, and that's what this album showcases. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this record. What are your favorite songs? Do you in agreement that this album deserved way more and that it's one of Nelly's strongest records for sure? My favorite tracks, like I said, I would say Miracles, Believers, Big Hoops, Waiting for the Night, and probably Don't Leave Me, because I just love that distinct Latin Caribbean sound. Although Bucket List comes up there close too, as well as the title track. Let me know in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed this review. Please give it a like and subscribe if you did. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. Peace, love, and light. Bye.